Now, Nigeria's 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory are struggling with a rising debt burden. Despite increased disbursements from the Federation Accounts or Federal Accounts Allocation Committee, in its State of States report, budget says as of June this year, total debt in states surpassed 11 trillion naira, marking a 14.57% rise in December 2023. Now, it's largely due to naira devaluation and growing foreign obligations. Now, the increase comes at a time when the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative noted that the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee disbursed 3.4 trillion naira to all government tiers in the second quarter of 2024. Now, Lagos State remains the most indebted state in Nigeria. Now, these sharp increases highlight a significant reliance on loans to finance government projects and other commitments, raising concerns about the sustainability of such debt levels. Now, let's quickly bring in Economist. He's an expert in anything economy. He's the MD and CEO, Dignity Finance and Investment Limited. Chijioke Ekechukwu, thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you very much.
You know, one thing I find very interesting, the top states that are leading in this debt burden, Lagos, that's ordinarily the economic hub of Nigeria, with over 20 million population. You have Rivers Oil, Kaduna, Delta Oil, Edo Oil. These are states that have a huge comparative advantage. What exactly do you think is going on here?
You know, when
they're still owing so much.
Yes, we're owing so much, and when we talk about economic reforms, that is actually the language we're hearing today. We should be able to look at the fiscal discipline. And if we're not able to measure the fiscal discipline and measure the revenue that we're getting, you see that we are not going to get it right in the reforms we think we're doing. And so if we continue to do reforms in terms of tax reforms, fiscal policy reforms, monetary policy reforms, and we are not looking at how we spend our money, how we have discipline in fiscal areas, then we are not just achieving anything. While we are usually talking about revenue, let every state look at what revenue they can generate, because there are some things that are peculiar with their states that they can actually start generating money almost immediately. Then we should be able to look at how we spend money. We are not spending money like people who are reforming the economy, people whose economy is struggling. We are spending money like we have a lot of it. Meanwhile, these are borrowed funds from all over the place. And again, we also do not have enough control over how a state borrows. Is it that they can continue to borrow? Because if you say the only measure they have is just to get approval from the State Assembly, and we know how the State Assembly members have been placed there.
Should there be a ceiling on how much, especially foreign borrowing, that the states can, you know, is that where the problem is? Should there be a cap?
There should be both a cap and then somebody to say to approve. And that approval shouldn't come from the state. You know, if we're talking about a debt management office to say, okay, you have reached your limit because of your economic size, because, you know, the cap you give to a state like Lagos State shouldn't be the same cap you give to another state somewhere that is low in size. So we can look at all those and say, we just don't continue to leave our doors open and they'll just continue to borrow and nobody tells them anything. And so we need to actually put that measure in place to ensure that they don't just move into international money lenders and borrow money, and then the burden will just be on our country. Because when we're talking about the debt burden of the country, it's a total of everything that everybody has owed. Absolutely. And that is actually how we have all our ratios to talk about.
And how troubling is it when you hear that 29 states actually use 80.7% of their IGR to service debt? That is... How sustainable really is this?
Again, that tells you how disciplined we are. If these people that are using 80% of their IGR to service debt, then you just know that they don't actually, they are not disciplined. The fiscal discipline I talk about.
So how do you even ensure fiscal discipline at the state level?
At the state level, so many things are wrong. I mentioned how the state assembly members are supposed to be the people, because in those state assemblies, they also have committees that are supposed to be monitoring and checking and, stopping and approving. But you see, those things don't happen because of the Lord that brought them in. So a lot of things are wrong with the system, but if the states cannot control, somebody somewhere in the federal should be able to say, for every loan that should be taken by the states, there has to be an approval gotten from somewhere. If that approval does not come, nobody's going to lend them money, either locally or internationally. So in other words, just something like having to have a guarantee. Okay, we're guaranteed that these people are going to pay this. And so because of that guarantee you're going to give, you say no or yes. If that guarantee does not come, you don't borrow. So there has to be a check and balance to the extent that it is not any state government that wakes up, that goes to international money markets to get money. So we need to put all those things in place and make sure they are working.
On the issue of debt profile, whether at the national level or the state level, you hear some experts say, look, there's a need to allow the private sector, let the private sector be at the driving, at the driving seat. Yeah, of borrowing. Should that be the case also at the state level?
That is not the practice. The state should be able to say, this is what we want. And what about if the private sector has interest in another party, in another state, or things like that?
Right.
So that may not happen. What should happen is that we should have functional state assemblies. If we don't have functional state assemblies, there must be a cap, a control put by DMO. Because we're still talking about the same country. If DMO is not able, the Minister for Finance should be able to put something in place to ensure that no state actually borrows. Otherwise, they withhold your allocation. No state borrows without certain approvals coming from the federal and things like that. Again, we need to be circumspect. We need to be prudent in everything we're doing in fiscal policy.
Of course, these borrowings do have a correlation with the level of poverty that you find all across the states. Well, the DMO should do more than just giving us the figures, right?
That's
right.
That's
we'll have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Dr. Chijioke Ekechukwu is MD, CEO, Dignity Finance and Investment Limited. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.